I'm Ben Data, CEO of Food Maven and a Denver Startup Week co-founder. Denver Startup Week has always been about community. And today, it's more important than ever to show how we can come together to create opportunities out of the challenges that we face. Opportunities for every member of the community. Before we dive in, we want to say a special thank you to our 2020 Denver Startup Week sponsors, who make it all possible. Thanks to our title sponsors, Downtown Denver Partnership, JP Morgan Chase, Prologis, and Zero. And our track sponsors who have made all the great content you're hearing today possible. Battery 621 and the Public Works, Capital One Cafe, Colorado Lending Source, Friday Health, Quizlet, Exactly, Zayo, and Zestful. Our headline event sponsors are bringing the excitement this week. Thank you to Wix, Kenzen, MAPR Agency, Obsidian HR, Kickstart Fund, Promontory Mortgage, Molson Coors, and Comcast. Finally, thank you to our partner and member sponsors listed on the screen. Thank you for your support of Denver Startup Week. You help make all of this possible.
At Zayo, our fiber fuels global innovation. Everything we do, everything we can imagine. Never in history has innovation happened at such a rapid pace. And all of it depends on bandwidth connectivity. Millions of miles of Zayo's fiber span the globe, traveling unique routes, providing dense metro footprints, offering next-generation solutions. We didn't just see the future of fiber, we built it. We delivered it. Every millisecond, our fiber is fueling crucial operations, breakthroughs, and innovations for the world's most impactful companies. Companies that are disrupting the status quo, igniting imaginations, revolutionizing industries, and creating brand new ones. Our customers are advancing wireless communication, transforming healthcare, changing education, revolutionizing transportation, redefining banking, powering retail, and upping the game in esports. These innovators rely on Zayo's fast, secure fiber networks to connect their offices, factories, data centers, clouds, exchanges, venues, and more. Ultimately, fueling innovation and transforming lives. And behind those fiber connections, Zayo is all about human connections. We take ownership in all we do. Our employees take the initiative to deliver trusted solutions to every customer and make their experience effortless. We are energetic and entrepreneurial, a partner to rely on. We are Zayo. We are working with our customers on what comes next, constantly anticipating what can be. We are fueling global innovation that is changing the world.
All right, good morning. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Denver Startup Week. I'm John Wilker with 360 Conferences. I'm the Spotlight and Headline Events Track Chair and a member of the Startup Week Organizing Committee. Thank you for joining us for our first ever virtual Denver Startup Week and this session on the same team, leveraging your network. If 2020 has taught us anything, it's that we are more powerful when we come together as a community to share ideas and help make each other better. And here we are, virtually showing the world what Denver is made of. At Denver Startup Week, we strive to make all of our sessions a space where attendees can connect, learn, and grow, regardless of gender identity, gender expression, race, ability, sexual orientation, and the combination of those identities. There is something for everyone at DSW. Thank you for joining us. And again, thank you to Zayo for being such a fantastic Denver Startup Week partner. With that, I will hand it off to Taylor for this awesome panel.
Thank you. Welcome to everyone who's joining us. We're so excited about this panel that's really just going to be an open conversation of how everyone can leverage what you have around you to help grow your business. And we just hope it's a conversation and we can share a lot of information. I'm kind of going to stay out of the way and let all the women who are joined with me really start the conversation. So a little bit about myself. From Denver. I was with the Rockies as a field reporter for 2 years, but now I'm out in Chicago working for the Chicago Cubs. I do college football for ESPN as well. So I have a little bit of experience of just leveraging communication with athletes, but really this panel is about all the women who will be joining me, like I said. So I'm going to kind of stay out of the way and let them talk. But first, I want to introduce them. We're going to begin with Ainsley McCallister, who is the founder of Uru Sports, who sponsors this panel. Ainsley is incredible what she has done so far in her career. From Michigan, she played field hockey and was a captain there, and then also went overseas to play professional field hockey in Australia and England. And when she was out there, kind of saw the need for a community for the sports world. And that's when the idea for Uru Sports came about. And she just saw that if there was a way to connect the international sports world and leverage those relationships to help everyone else around the world, then that would be a good idea. And that's how Uru Sports started. So super happy to have you on today, Ainsley. Excited about the wisdom that you will share.
Thanks, Taylor.
Welcome to you. And then Batouly Camara is our other guest. And Batouly, born and raised in New York, but actually of Gideon descent. And Batouly played Division I basketball at the University of Connecticut, which, for anyone who knows women's basketball, that in and of itself is an accomplishment that she could hang her hat on. However, that is just where everything starts for her. In 2020, she was awarded an ESPY award it was the Billie Jean King Award for everything that she's doing with her nonprofit Wake. And Wake is Women and Kids Empowerment. So excited to talk with her about that. She is a TED Talk presenter. She's used to sharing wisdom, published a book, and is still playing professional basketball, mind you, out in Spain. So, hola, Batouly, happy to have you here with us this morning.
Hola.
And then our next guest is Sydney Shaw. Sydney has a bachelor's and a master's degree from Stanford and also played field hockey and lacrosse there. So we got a ton of qualified athletes from these amazing D1 schools. She started off in tech, but now is the head of operations for Just Women's Sports. And that's a media outlet that is dedicated to really solving the issue of less than 4% of sports that are broadcasted being women's sports. So welcome, Sydney. Thanks for joining us. Happy to have you and your wisdom here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I wanted to start today with just a little bit of an icebreaker before we dive into all of what you guys have to share, some of the questions that the audience has to ask. I think it's appropriate in the state of our world right now, everything that's gone on, for us to talk about, yes, you know, you women have gotten to where you are because you've put in so much hard work, but this past year, everyone's kind of had to take a step back, relax a little bit, maybe for the first time ever. So my question to all of you is, what was the go-to show during some of the shutdowns from the coronavirus? Ainsley, we'll begin with you.
I actually, I can't say I've watched TV, shockingly. So
what did you do to entertain yourself?
Well, we launched a podcast with Uru, and I actually got into painting, which I'm not artistic at all. So I kind of went for a different hobby. So yeah, my paintings are not good, so you should not ask to see them. But yeah, that's really what I've been up to.
And a lot of reading, it looks like, because your bookshelf is quite full.
That is very true too.
Julie, what about yourself?
I second that. I do not watch TV. I probably stopped watching TV and shows by the time I was 14. I really wanted to start some shows, but I couldn't. I tried 2 episodes of Shark Tank. I thought that would encourage me and help me. It didn't. I mean, great show, but I definitely didn't watch TV during that time. But I also did do a few interviews and went live with over 80 guests, which took a lot of my time.
So moral of the story so far, I guess, if you want to be a successful woman in sports, don't get addicted to television. That seems to be the theme. Sydney, what about you? Did you have a show?
I must be the outlier here. I watched a lot of TV. One show that I watched a ton of is Chopped. Have you ever seen that show? I'm not very into cooking, but I started picking up the hobby during quarantine and or just staying at home. And so I just like learned a lot from Chopped, and that was my go-to.
Okay, so informational shows. Got it. All right. Well, I think we should first start off by saying thank you to you guys for joining and for sharing your wisdom. This panel is just going to be a lot of how you leverage your network to help grow your business and how do you stay connected professionally. So in this world today, I think the way that we're communicating is different than ever before. So I want to start by asking you all, how do you foster your professional relationships? Because sometimes you might only have, a few minutes to catch up with an old teammate or an old coach or somebody that you've met who is important to you professionally. How do you continually build those relationships? And maybe we split this up into a two-part question of what it was like before, and then maybe with the way that the world is changing, how you've adjusted and how you're doing it now. Ainsley, let's start with you.
Yeah, well, I really like to kind of look at, it's all about utilizing your network is really about building deep relationships. And so it's not about the number of people you connect with, but it's how deep that relationship is. And so I really like to look at it as like everyone has their own circle, right? And so if you can stay in touch with people who are really just wanting to see your vision come to life and are going to bat for it, and they believe in you, and you really have to instill trust and kind of this give-get relationship. That's really, and they're willing to kind of even volunteer their time, and just they get so excited about what you're doing. So I think it's really about like constant relationships. And then for you just never know what's going to happen. So like we have a Uru ambassador who's a professional basketball player, and he introduced us to the Players Impact in Boston, who introduced us to or invited us down to the Super Bowl in Miami for a VIP event there, who then from relationships there, we got to go to the NBA All-Star game to present. And then there we got an introduction to go present at the Stanford Business Conference, where we met an investor who then introduced us to the guy who's developing our tech now. So I think it's all about just really being open and to whatever comes your way, but being very thankful, humble, authentic, and really being like respecting people's time. And so that's really how we got Uru to where we are today. So.
Batouly, what would you add to that?
I think that's a great point. I remember one of the first piece of advice that I received when I was just learning how to network, attending conferences, was don't bring your business card. And I know everyone says, bring your business card, make that natural connection. But I think it was really stopping me from making natural connections. It's not about quantity, but about the quality of those conversations and really making an impact, because you don't know who they know or who's in their circle. And so I remember the first, conference I went to, and I was like, okay, I'm not going to bring my business card. And this was scary for me. How will they remember me? How will we make that connection? What will I do after that? But it made every conversation much more intentional, much more real, and much more easier, because it wasn't about the exchange. It was about the give and get, and saying that everyone you meet is connected in some way, and saying this is important, maybe not now, but down the line, and really working to leverage those relationships. And for me, I was in a space of being an athlete. So it wasn't about, I can make this ass. Compliance they would have called compliance in like 2 minutes, So for me, it was just really about making those natural connections. And why were you here? Why were you investing in the women's game? And seeing beyond just the scope of reality, just seeing beyond the surface level. And now, as I've graduated, really working to touch back and say, this is where I am. This is things that we talked about, and what can we do now? So it's definitely from a different space.
Yeah, and Sydney, what about you?
Yeah, so at Just Women's Sports, we chat a lot with athletes and coaches, and I've found, like they both said, it's super important to just keep up relationships. We always say try to make a friend, not just because we want something like in return, but just because we want to maintain that relationship. And a lot of the times we're hitting up those same athletes later on or coaches for other interviews. And I always love sending texts when that player plays well at a certain game. So I always find following up and keeping that relationship ongoing is super important.
Yeah, for sure. In what I do, people would always talk about, I mean, in everything, they always say it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. And I always found that a little bit interesting because it almost felt like, okay, well, everyone you meet, you have to get something from. And in the mindset that I had and what I was told was just be who you're going to be 100% of the time. You don't need to try to form into somebody when you're in this group and be somebody else when you're in that group, because then it comes across as unauthentic and you're going to get confused about who you are. So really just stick to who you are 100% of the time, and people will be naturally drawn to you just from your authenticity. But at the same time, people around you are there for a reason, and they ultimately will help you move the needle in your business. So how do you leverage the relationships that you build in this, in your specific businesses to help you move forward what you're trying to do? Ainsley?
Oh, go ahead, Ainsley.
Batouly, you can take this off. Go for it.
I was just saying, one of the biggest things for me, especially after I graduated, was what do I bring to the table? We talk about the give and the get. What do I offer? And as you learn, kind of for me in this nonprofit sector, the first thing is the need. What is the immediate need, and what do you bring to the table, and how are you of value? And I always wanted to come from that. I think that was one of my strengths, in leveraging connections. What do I bring to the table? What does this person see in me? What are they doing, and how does it relate? And I think once you're leveraging those networks, I always say, how can I make this as easy as possible, as effortless as possible on your end with maximum impact? And I think we don't think about that enough. How can I just make this super easy for you? You're going to have maximum impact. But we both can kind of use this as a stepping stone and continue to work. And I don't believe in, one event and it's over. How can we really build this into something that we're both passionate about that can extend beyond both of our networks and kind of tap into new territory? So I think that was one thing that really helped me in leveraging networks, was saying, what do I bring to the table? Who is this person, and how can we really partner and collaborate on these ideas?
Before we get to anyone else, Batouly, do you have specific examples that you could share of times that's really worked for you?
Absolutely. I would say when I first went to India back in 2017 and working with a nonprofit organization called Dribble Academy, and they said, we want to take our nonprofit to the next level. And how do we do that? And I said, okay, well, you being connected, I would love to learn more globally. I would love to travel. I would love to expand Wake and to have a basketball camp. And so that was one way where it's, okay, I know exactly what I bring to the table. I know that this is an opportunity to understand the game globally while you're at that level and you're in India, and how can we create this kind of partnership where we're both expanding our networks. You're now able to come to UConn to come to games. I'm now able to go there, meet and understand, okay, what is NBA India? How have they grown the game at the grassroots level? And I think that was definitely one way where it was definitely mutually beneficial in so many ways.
I love that. Ainsley, what about you?
Yeah, I love, like Batouly said it so well, but I really love her point of collaboration. Like everything comes back to working together. And that's where, if you approach it with, everyone is working on their own endeavor too. So it's, how can you bring value to them? And if it's not now, even you asking and actually genuinely wanting to help them move their needle further as well, they'll be able to tell if it's authentic or not, And so if you genuinely want to help them and they sense that, they'll also want to help you. And it's just this like kind of, how can we help each other in this? So I think it's really like it's been cool to bring on people on our podcast, like Devin Gardner. He just came on recently. He's just got a big network. He played quarterback at the University of Michigan, then went on to play for the Steelers and for the Patriots for a little bit, and then went to play football in Japan. And now he's recently returned and is starting this really amazing organization in Detroit. And so bringing awareness to, he's helping us get insight on what the football scene around the world is. Like, who would have thought they played football, American football in Japan, and had these really well-established leagues there and in Italy, and little did we know in Australia, and just like scattered everywhere. So he's giving us that different insight, and we helped him promote his young go-getters on our podcast. So it really is like a fun collaboration, and that's what it's really all about.
Yeah, and for us at Just Women's Sports, I go back to, we speak to a lot of athletes, and there have been many times where athletes have introduced us to their teammates to interview. We have a situation where one athlete who we interviewed ended up working for us and helping with athlete outreach because she's very connected in that space and she loved what we were doing. And that happened because we made a friend and fostered that relationship.
And I think it all comes back to trust when you're building those relationships. I know for me, a huge thing with the athletes that I cover is trust. They want to know that they can trust me with their stories and the things that they tell me. And you mentioned how, you'll get introduced to other teammates, and that's huge in my industry as well, where athletes will pass along, hey, you can trust her or you can't trust her. And so building that trust is so important. And for me, it's just being consistent, consistently showing that I care about you as more than just an athlete, and, and I trust, or that they can trust me with everything that they're saying. I'm either not sharing it as they asked me to, or sharing it in a way that reflects well. So it truly is all about building that trust, which helps foster those relationships. So for you guys, as you have gone through your careers, while you've all accomplished so much already, but you're still very young in your careers, what would be a piece of advice that you would share as to how you feel like the relationships that you have had have helped impact what you're doing? Ainsley, do you want to start?
Yeah, so I think Uru really is just founded on relationships, and it's a global network. We have athletes lending insight on what their playing experience was like in over 28 countries right now. So it really is a network business. And I think for how we got there, it really comes back to just this respect, right? And so I think if you really respect each other and build this community and relationship, we've utilized through our athletes, we actually got an introduction to an accelerator program in San Francisco. And that's where we gained a lot of our business connections and relationships that have open doors to investments and other various business, really growth opportunities. And so that's where it's really diving into those relationships. So, yeah.
I love that. Batouly, what about you? You've experienced so much you all have, but from being at UConn, a huge university, to now playing overseas and all your work with Wake, what advice would you maybe go back and give your college self on things that you learned through the process of getting Wake to where it is right now?
I would definitely say never underestimate the planning process. I think never stop asking yourself questions as you continue to grow, as you meet new people. Never feel like you know enough. And I continue to say that. I would say that to my younger self who is still reaching out. And the biggest thing that I really wanted myself to know was never be afraid to tap into your direct resources. I think sometimes we think if I connect with this person or if I connect with this many people or that person, that's what's really going to push the needle. But your immediate resources, I think, are so important, especially when you're trying to get your nonprofit or your organization off the ground. What is the need? How do I really identify and sit with this? Why is this the missing link? And who am I directly in contact with? Again, being at UConn, it was felt pretty direct, but still saying, okay, what is the School of Business? What is the sport management program? What is the communications program, graphic designs? What is at my immediate fingertip that I can use to start to really begin and get the ball rolling, and applying to literally every single grant at the University of Connecticut, every seed program. That's what I did. And that's what I would continue to tell myself. And that has really made the difference. And I would say, especially during quarantine, being that I had such a strong foundation, it only made opportunities and connections easier to get, because everyone kind of understood and had a strong base of who I was and where the organization was going. So I would say never underestimate the power of your immediate circle and the power of planning something that you really want to flourish.
And Sydney, your journey is a little bit different because you started off in tech and then you got into just women's sports. So for you, how did you leverage your network to completely change directions and then get to where you are right now?
I've always just tried to take risks and go for it. I think you can really spend a lot of time just questioning yourself and kind of being nervous to reach out to certain people, thinking maybe I'm not experienced enough. I'm pretty early on in my career, so I definitely had some of those thoughts. But I mean, I just realized, like, what do I have to lose? And I'm never going to know if I don't go for it. So even making the transition from tech into just women's sports really came about from a LinkedIn message that I sent to our CEO and founder. And we just, started talking, and she sold me on the vision that I believed in. And so that's how that happened. But it really came from just taking a risk and going for it.
I think when you talk about risks, sometimes, they don't work out in your favor, but that's okay. So, and I want to talk a little bit about some of the maybe mistakes or failures that you guys have had in your careers, because you can learn so much from those quote unquote mistakes or failures, which ultimately probably end up being for the good. So do you guys all have a situation where maybe you did take a risk and it didn't work out for your good, but you learned in the process of, hey, that maybe don't approach it that way. And in the future, you approach it differently and it worked out?
I think so. When I first started, I came back from Australia where I was playing my last season internationally. And I joined an accelerator program, and I had that intuition of what I wanted to build, the vision, but I wasn't confident enough in my business intuition to actually follow my gut and pursue my own vision. Instead, I listened to mentors almost too much. So I think it's really important to not be afraid to ask, like you're saying, take the risk, but then also to step back and also constantly do a gut check and remind yourself, okay, I need to be grounded here. And I've lived this experience. I have this vision. I need to be confident in it. And so there I was kind of swayed to go one way instead of actually my kind of big dream, right? Because it's a Midwestern accelerator. And so they're going to be really conservative. Whereas then when I went to the San Francisco accelerator after going back overseas and coaching in South Africa, I was then they understood the big vision. So it is really kind of cool to look back and be like, oh, I should have trusted my gut a little more and been confident, but it is good to take advice, listen to it. We wouldn't be here today without our mentors and advisors. So it is just learning what to distinguish as advice and really hold on to. So,
yeah, I would say that's something that in my business, I've had to really learn how to value the advice of different mentors, but also being true to your identity. Because in my industry, being on television is very subjective. So there's some people that say, hey, this is awesome, I love the way you do this. But then another person could criticize that same thing that you're doing and saying, I don't like that, don't do that anymore. And I learned that really on in my career, where I had a bunch of people whose opinions I valued, and they would tell me contrasting things of, hey, you'd be like, I love the way that you emphasize these different words, or the way you ask these questions. And somebody else who I really value as well would tell me the opposite. And so I kind of had to step back and be like, okay, who do you want to be? Who does Taylor want to be, and stay true to that. And that gets shaped through your mentors, but you can't take that all as the end all be all, because if you do, sometimes you get away from who you deep down want to be. So I think that's really good advice, Ainsley, and something that I know I've experienced a lot of, trying to, filter through some of the advice that you get. Batouly, have you ever experienced anything like that?
I would 100% second that. My initial goal, which is funny, you always go back to your initial goal. And that's why I say never underestimate the planning process of what you want to do and where you want to go, and keeping that, there are definitely like little steps to getting to your larger goal, but never underestimate that. And for me, my larger goal was to create an all-girls boarding school that offered sports in Guinea, West Africa. And I think we constantly kind of go through this self-sabotage. Am I good enough? Do I have the experience? Do I know enough? And for me, as a sophomore, starting my own nonprofit, getting into the business world outside of sport was not an easy adjustment. They're like, apply the athletic mindset, but I'm like, these are soft skills. Like, what can I really hold on to? And I wish, and I think the nonprofit would have been further along. And I'm so thankful for where we are. But I think further along in saying, this is what we wanted to do. But I'm so thankful that I have the experience now of being international, of having gone to India and France and back to Guinea, and really understanding the environment, what was going on, basketball at the grassroots level. But I think, again, having amazing mentors and really being eager to push the organization, I think was kind of a bit of a setback, because that's too big. You have to start small. What do you know? Maybe just do basketball aspects and camps, which I love and was great. But I definitely think just staying true to your gut feeling, like this is what it is, and taking those small steps. So.
Yes,
definitely.
and I'm curious if you ever experienced anything of maybe contrasting advice from mentors, because you completely switched industries, and I'm sure there were some people who thought, what are you doing? But here you are now, and you're probably grateful for taking that bold step.
Yeah, I think after graduation, I felt this pressure to just jump into any good job that I could get, without really taking a step back and thinking about like you said, like, who am I? What am I passionate about? Which has always been sports. I was an athlete, and I knew I wanted to get into that, but I wasn't sure how. And so I just kind of took one of the first jobs that I could get, and tried to learn as much as I could. But there was a point where I realized it's not like I wasn't happy, but I realized like I can't see myself continuing to do this job. And so that's when I realized, like, I want to make a pivot into sports, and how do I do that? And at that point, that's when I just tried reaching out to people who I knew were in that industry and seeing what I could learn, not reaching out being like, hey, give me a job at this place. It was really like reaching out and asking, like, what was your path like? What can I learn from you if I, want to maybe dip my toe in the water there. So that's how that came about. But I've definitely tried to balance taking risks, and before doing that, like, really learning what I'm getting myself into.
Yeah, and when you talk about reaching out, there's so many new platforms in 2020 and the way that we're able to communicate. So what are the ways that you guys, or platforms that you use to reach out, that you feel like have been the most successful?
I can start there. I know I mentioned before LinkedIn. is definitely one that I absolutely love. You're able to, see, first of all, connect with people. And I've found that I really try and connect with people that we have like overlapping. Maybe we went to the same school or we played the same sport or have, similar hobbies. Sometimes that's listed in the LinkedIn profile. You could do a little bit of stalking. But no, it's, I think, a great way to just connect with people. And see how things overlap and make a friend that way. And I always, after I connect, if it's someone that I'm interested in having a conversation with, I always follow up with a message saying, thanks for connecting. I saw you worked at this company, or I saw that you went to this school and studied this. Like, I would love to hear more about your story. And it's like, thinking back of how many times I've done that, I've actually like made a lot of like really great relationships and mentors through just messaging via LinkedIn. So I'm all for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can go next. So I've also had a lot of success through just messaging people through LinkedIn, through a random, like I said, like finding a commonality and starting there. But my most successful way to connect and have really meaningful like relationships, that instead of like LinkedIn, sometimes they go like this, and then they'll come up. Or if you really want some quick, accelerated, like deeper connection, I've found that getting a mentor or someone to introduce you via email, because then you're already coming with their recommendation, so they trust you a bit more. So warm introductions, I can't say enough for. So
I would definitely agree. I think getting a mentor or someone who's connected to really make that introduction has been incredible for me. And Twitter actually has done wonders in making connections. But again, not in in an overpowering way, but saying, hey, this is something you've tweeted and you're really passionate about. I would love to connect, but definitely following up via email and saying, I hope we can connect soon. So I'd say, that email introduction and Twitter.
I actually met Batouly over Instagram, right?
Yeah, Instagram.
Like, so it's all platforms. So
yeah, I would say for me too, it's a lot of social media reaching out. For me, it was other reporters, trying to learn from them. And I always kind of found, be willing to offer something to them. And so, in college, I would try to shadow some of the reporters who would come in, and I would reach out to them. Sometimes on social media, sometimes I would have somebody connect us and say, hey, can I buy you coffee? Can I bring you something to the field that you might need, whether that was dinner or what have you, so that I could offer them something. So it wasn't like, they were just taking on this random college student who wanted to learn, but I felt like I was giving something back. And I think that is sometimes undervalued, of how much just like a simple coffee or a dinner, bringing whatever to the conversation can be important. Because a lot of times when you're first starting off, you feel like, well, what can I offer? What can I do to, help this person? But maybe it's just, a simple coffee or what have you. Have you guys been in situations where, you're trying to learn from somebody, but you feel like you can't offer anything? So how do you try to kind of add value to them?
That's a great question. And I struggled with that for a long time. And that's why I think I'm probably so passionate. I speak about that is, what do I bring in? Someone asked in the chat, how do you get from a mentor who feels like they have everything? And I realized going back to, I always go back to this point, what was the need? And then there's only a need when something is missing. And I think the added value is through the conversations, through seeing you develop and grow. And I've realized through mentors who are amazing that when you kind of start a project and then you're growing, that adds excitement to the relationship. They're watching you grow, they're watching you expand, your wins become their wins and vice versa. And I think going on that journey, and for me, it's like, okay, women in sports in Guinea, in a new country on a global level, that may not be something that they have experienced firsthand. They may be well equipped in this area of one another, but at this particular intersection, this is new for them. And so that's another thing I ask is, who are you connecting with? and how can this be exciting for them to, start connecting or start thinking, touching back on relationships that they haven't checked in on, but saying this is a great connection. So I think never underestimate that, the power of that experience, of these conversations, of how they are growing as well.
I also think you never know what the mentor or advisor might be looking for. So like she said, like the excitement or the journey, but if I had looked, one of our investors who was a former head of product at Yahoo Sports, I would have looked at that and been like, there's no way I could bring anything to the table there, right? But we met at the Stanford Business Conference, and he wanted to do this similar concept. And build out this community and network. And so he jumped on board because he's so excited to see this vision to life and wants to bring community and really like transparency to the sports space. So it's really cool. You just don't know where people are and what you can actually, what value you can bring until you talk. So.
Anything to add to that, Sid?
No, I think that was well said. I think for me, I'm definitely just trying to go into those situations with just a willingness to learn and absorb everything that a mentor or whatnot has to say and has to offer. Even if I don't know exactly what I'm bringing to the table, at least I can know that, I'm being like a great listener and I'm trying to absorb all the advice that they're willing to give and taking their time to give.
For sure. Okay, I want to open it up now to questions. I know we've gotten a lot of questions already from people. So I'm just going to start answering or asking some of them. You guys answer. But we're going to begin with, what books did you guys read? So I guess any book recommendations that you might have. Ainsley, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'm happy to. One of my favorite books that I read this year was actually recommended by the founder of Home Court AI. And it was named Hooked, and it's how to build habit forming products. And it was super fascinating because you learn why you see all these social platforms that you're addicted to, right? Like Instagram, Twitter, and it's why, right? The question is, and how do you build that? And so you look at all the top platforms, and it really dives into how to bring that habit forming product to make your like customer coefficient higher. So it's like every athlete that you bring into your platform, how can you have them bring in 3 other athletes? And so it's a really powerful book, and I recommend it to anyone who's trying to build a SaaS platform. So.
Love that.
I would say Getting Things Done by David Allen. I love that book. And kind of the first chapter, they talk about, do you miss birthdays? And it's like, yes. Like, do you miss your best friend's birthdays? And I'm like, yes, I do. Oh my goodness. And it's like, it's a 2-minute text. And it just really helps you with productivity and really getting things done in an efficient way. And for me, balancing grad school and playing overseas and then, figuring out Wake, I was like, I got to stop missing birthdays. Like that was the sentence that captured me. But it just talks about, what are 2-minute actions that you can take, sending that text message, and what are the next actionable steps that you can take. So that really changed things for me. Like if you need to send this email, just do the next actionable step. What is that? Taking out your phone. What is the next step? It doesn't have to be grand, it doesn't have to be large, but just take the next step. And it has allowed me to be much more productive in a short amount of time and to really not feel burnt out, which I absolutely love. So highly recommend that book. He has a TED Talk and a bunch of videos online. So Getting Things Done by David Allen.
Yeah, a common theme here seems to be habits. I read a book recently called Atomic Habits, and I really liked it. I think it was super helpful for being like during this time with COVID, working from home, changing to working remotely, I've had to try and like balance a bunch of different things that I hadn't before. So it was super interesting in learning how to like break bad habits, form better ones. So that one was a good one I'd recommend. And it's a pretty easy read. It's pretty simple.
I love that. The next question we have, how would you leverage a connection on LinkedIn if they are out of your inner circle, especially if they are at the executive level?
That's tough. I usually am always thinking I should get premium. I should just do it. I should just make that investment. But I think there's always a connection, and figuring out, are they on different platforms? How can you get their email? And figuring out what they're interested in, because there is some sort of connection there. So I think that is great. And for me, it's always been, does someone know? And usually, like I said, being out of your inner circle is really, really tough. But figuring out, are there other things, are there articles, or is there anyone else they're connected to that maybe you can kind of find a commonality if it's an area of interest. And also just make the ask. You never know if they're going to respond, because I do think you can be surprised many times.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think you can go for it and ask, but I also think if you don't hear back, which is common, right? It's a longer term play, but it's because building a network isn't immediate. That's a really important thing. I think you kind of look at short-term goals and long-term goals. And so it's your circles, right? You might have this circle and someone you can map out, okay, well, how can I talk to them through the people that I know? Everyone's like a couple degrees away, right? And so it's, how do you build authentic relationships in order to get there one day? So I think mapping that out actually has helped me reach some really important people that have been really valuable, but it's taken a year, so.
Yeah, I agree with both of those statements. I don't have much to add, but I agree.
Just something quick that I would add to that. I've made a lot of random requests to people who I did not know, way out of my network. And the things that I found that stand out, and now being a little bit on the receiving end of people reaching out to me wanting to get career advice, here's what the advice that I would give. First of all, try to find something about that human that you can say to them when you start off the initial conversation. So for example, when I got on with ESPN and I originally reached out to one of the big bosses at ESPN, who, by the way, gets about 5,000 emails a day from reporters because everybody wants to work there. He's seeing all these generic emails all the time. Well, I found out that he was really into skiing, and I'm from Colorado. I love to ski. So that was initially what I said to him in the conversation. So I think that kind of sparked his interest of, hey, this girl's talking about skiing. This is something I'm passionate about. And then also be very specific in what you ask for. My kind of play was, I'm going to ask if I can have 5 minutes of their time. And when I get on the phone with them for 5 minutes, I know exactly what I want to ask. I've had people reach out to me asking, hey, can I chat with you about your career? And I'll say, yeah, that's great. And then I get on the phone with them and they don't really have a direction. And honestly, I kind of feel awkward because I'm like, so am I just supposed to talk? They're the one who wanted to talk to me. So I would say be creative in the way that you message them first. Try to find something about them that will make your email stand out. And then once you do get that connection, have something ready to go of specific things that you want to know and specific things you want to ask them, because then you'll stand out even more. So that's what I would have to add to that, because I've been the queen of messaging strangers, and especially people who felt so high up at the time. So let's look at some of the next questions. I know we touched a little bit on this, but let's go back because I think it's a great question. How do you add value to your mentors?
I think with this, I really have asked every single mentor that I work with, what can I offer you? What do you need right now in this time, in this space? Is there anyone I can connect you with? Is there anything that you're working on? So that is definitely one way. And as I mentioned, kind of bringing this new idea and I think you have different mentors for different things. And I think that has to be something very clear and spoken about at the forefront. And so if this is a mentor where there will be an exchange, being very clear in the first conversation of what can I bring to the table? Why are you doing this? Well, why did you feel compelled to kind of speak to me and to work on this project with me? What do you see in the potential of this project? And so I think just having clear conversations, not assuming what can I do for you? Is there anyone I can connect you with? And also being able to really, I would say the power of leveraging your network is also connecting them with people of interest. What kind of business are they in? Hey, this is great. Do you want to go to this game? Do you want to do that? How can I also expand their network and what they're doing? So that's one thing that I found has been very helpful, is when I meet someone, I'm like, you'd be great for my mentor, and making that connection for them.
Yeah, I think introducing your mentors to other people that they may be interested in is a huge one. That if you're focused on building your network, and we all, like, over time, you have so many people, especially being athletes and playing around the world, you have people who are doing so many interesting things and are starting these projects that really can influence and change the world, right? If they're connected with the right people. So if these mentors are really good at a certain thing and you think they might be interested, just a random, hey, I have someone who I think you'd like to talk to, can go a long way. So it's not really thinking about yourself, it's also thinking about them.
Yeah, and I think just keeping up that relationship, you don't want to let it fall through the cracks at all. Make sure you're following up with them. If they help you on something, make sure you're very grateful and thanking them. Even if there's not something that you feel like you can immediately bring to the table, I'm sure there will be further down the line. So just making sure that you express to them how grateful you are for all the advice and the guidance through your career, and just keeping that relationship ongoing.
That's great advice. Have you ever had a rough start to a relationship that you were able to save? If so, how did you save it? Or were you really just dependent on that connection to show you some grace and give you a second chance?
I've had the roughest starts. We are living in the spirit of transparency. And it's like, I didn't think it was a rough start. Like, my goodness, I thought it was an amazing connection. And it was an investor, and she said, send me your business plan. I guess I didn't know my business plan shouldn't be 30 pages. And she absolutely hated it, didn't respond to me at all. I followed up again, and it was a rough start. Like, it was just not good. And I remember just emailing her one day, and I said, I would love to just hop on a call. 5 minutes of your time. I would just love to hear your thoughts, your initial thoughts. And this for me was, I'm ready to hear your wrath, whatever it may be. And she said, if you didn't ask me that and you didn't follow up in that way, I wouldn't have connected with you. Very honest. And she's like, your business plan is too long. I wish you'd followed up this way. I wish you'd asked for the call instead of sending your business plan. I was like, you're right. And maybe that was, a bit aggressive on that end. And I said, okay. And we had that conversation, and I kid you not, 5 minutes went from 5 minutes to an hour, to meeting weekly, to meeting for coffee. And that was an amazing save. And I think that phone call and really showing up and saying, maybe that wasn't right, owning it, being accountable. What did you think from that? Where can we go from here? Because I do think there is a connection here. And I'm so thankful that I did follow up and wasn't afraid of that no or no answer to have saved it. And I think just being, again, transparent and being eager to learn was really saved that relationship.
What I think was important in what you just said is not only be willing to learn, but also like taking the time to like make a change from there. You could have just like absorbed the advice that she gave you. Yeah, you shouldn't have had 30 pages and then just been like, whatever, like I'm going to continue sending this 30-page thing to other people. Instead, you kind of like realized, oh, maybe like, let me figure out why she's actually saying this is what I shouldn't do, and learn from it, and then make a change from there if you feel that that's the right move to make.
Yeah, I also really liked your point about being accountable and saying, that I did not represent myself or our company in the best way here. Like I would like a second chance, like, and then meeting them where they're at. And even if it's 5 minutes, I think there's getting on the phone or meeting in person is so much better than email. So I've transitioned. I used to send long emails at the beginning to try to like almost, I'd tell people too much to try to get them to have a phone call with me when they're more interested in just get something to get them excited and then jump on the phone. And that's where real like connection can take place. So.
And I think people respond really well to owning up to your mistakes. I know I've had some times where relationships didn't start off great, and I've kind of always tried to take the approach of addressing it and say, hey, I'm sorry about this, or, this happened and I'm going to do this better the next time. And I've always found that people respond really well to that, because oftentimes, people don't open up to their mistakes and don't accept those. And so when you do, I really do think you stand out. That's something that I would say for sure. Okay, another question. I'm a game designer and run my own board game company, so I work closely with game store managers and owners. Since I'm friends with a lot of my customers and now launching a second business that involves them in a new way, how do you recommend approaching customers you already work with to go even deeper in terms of new ways to work together? Can you give an example of when you've done this?
So if I'm understanding the question correctly, so we've built an international team of athletes, so of Olympians and other people who've lived the Uru life of playing around the world. And we constantly go to them for advice. So we have like monthly webinars, or it's like bi-monthly now, but we really value their opinion and and how much they're helping shape our company and our future. So, and I think people want to feel like they have an input and are valued. So that's been a really powerful thing. They're all like, each of them have a huge network that then are further customers. So I think if you can get in front of them and be authentic and be like, hey, we want your help, that's a great way to really make them feel valued.
I think since they're already your customers and you're launching a second business with them, they know you, they're familiar with you, they probably trust you. And the second thing is, for me, like a personal example is if I want to go back into a camp in Guinea and I'm working with another federation to kind of do this, sometimes you don't want to ask twice, you don't want to go back to the same investor. But I think having confidence that this is a new way, this is a new approach, this is something you need. And if they're your customers, you already know kind of that market and what they need and how to approach it. So I would say, stay confident in knowing that you know them and that this is something that they may need and that you already have the trust. And so, like I said, going back to other federations or investors and saying, I know this was another project. I don't always recommend this, but this is something new, this is something different, and really being able to show that and being confident that this is what they need. So.
Totally. I agree completely. And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier with trust, and obviously you have built those relationships before and they are your customers, so they know you. So I think, just like Batouly said, just being confident in that.
I love that. One last question. This one's for Touly. You were the recipient of the 2020 Billie Jean King Award. Now the FedEx Cup is being renamed the Billie Jean King Cup. What opportunities do you think this opens up for women in the industry?
I think just Billie Jean King herself, just opening doors. Like, we have to, all hail the queen. We have to start there. But I think this does so much on different levels, because I think there are levels to, talk about the grassroots, talk about now owning teams, but this different level of leadership. And now your names are on these amazing places. And so I think that continues the conversation. That is just for legacy and continuing to break barriers. So I think it just adds to women's sports. What we're doing in every field across the W, across all professional sports team. I think this is just another milestone, another glass ceiling shattered, just continuing to pave the way and saying that women are not just limited to these spaces, but to create longer legacies. So I think it does amazing things for sports, and I'm so excited.
I love it. Well, it looks like our time is basically up. So thank you guys so much for the conversation today. I know I really enjoyed listening to it and all the advice that you have to give. So appreciate your time. I hope everyone took something out of this conversation. It was a great one. And I'm sure, speaking of connections, you guys just want to quickly share where everybody can find you on social if they wanted to reach out more.
Yeah, you can find us at uru.sports on Instagram, or you can email us at team@urusports.com.
Perfect.
Yeah, you can follow us on Instagram at Wake. We're also on our website, wake-academy.org. And I'm looking forward to connecting with you all.
Yeah, you can follow us on social. It's at Just Women's Sports, or email us at team@justwomensports.com. And same, we're super excited to hear from you guys.
Wow.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, guys. It was fun to talk.
Thanks, Taylor.
See ya.